Welcome to our first lore video on the Trench Crusade, an introduction to the wars between heaven and hell and the incident that began it. We cover what began the war, then we will go through the basics on each of the factions and then dive into more specific videos on them in the coming weeks, along with attempts to examine and answer some of the mysteries we don't have a lot of information on so far. So, let's begin. The Trench Crusade is an alternative take on history, where the beliefs of those in the First Crusade came to life, and the main incident is during that crusade. The armies of the Church captured the Holy City. Under the most holy of temples, the Knights Templar discovered secret vaults, and within them an ancient demonic artifact. The Templars, blinded by greed and with weakness in their hearts, fell to their knees. They had found a new lord. Seeing the unholy symbol of which the artifact spoke, they began trafficking with devils and committing all manner of unspeakable rites. This is dubbed the First Heresy. The armies of the Church retreated, and Jerusalem became a depraved pit where hell and our mortal plane now bled into one. For 8 centuries the Church has waged its crusade to take back the Holy City. The landscape has been utterly devastated, crisscrossed with thousands of miles of mud, trenches and craters. The crusade is now waged with armies wielding terrifying weaponry, and both sides conjure up supernatural beings of such immense power they are nigh unstoppable. Even with such incalculable might, the armies are at a stalemate. It is the year of our Lord 1914. This brutal, merciless war between the forces of heaven and hell rages on. This is not merely a fight for survival, it is a cataclysmic struggle that will decide the very fate of humanity. This is the Trench Crusade. Now let's take a look on each of the factions, and I will be doing breakdowns based on the lore sampler and theories, etc. in future days. One of my favourites so far is the Court of the Seven-Headed Serpent. Each of them is a cunning archdevil and represents one of the 7 mortal sins that humanity has embraced. They rule the court that oversees hell's war against the forces of creation. But the membership of this council is an ever-shifting and changing thing, as many of those who serve hell have moved in and out of their positions on the council. This rise and fall and rhythm matches those on earth, their followers, and their successes and failures. Little needs to occur for a member of the council to lose their position, have their wings torn, and have to begin their ascent to power once again. Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies, has the greatest power as he wages war against creation with his black grail. But as he is waging that war, it leaves the seat open, so lesser angels compete for the honour of filling his empty throne. At their command, the forces of hell step forth from the mouth to fight. Now to add a little more context to the opening incident, when the Templars opened the gates, the forces of the court poured out. They fell upon the Middle East, Asia and Europa, ending the lives of all mortals they met. But some lived, falling to their knees to worship, and others became the first heretics, joining the devil's forces. The court arranges their human followers to take most of the dying and suffering of this great war, to be the brunt of the impact in terms of the losses, to spite the god tyrant and increase their own powers. Now let's move on to New Antioch. It's the church's only line of defence against the forces of the heretics. The city's forces fall under the command of the Duke of New Antioch. The current duke is called Constantine. After the acts of the Templars and the incursion of hell, the city became fortified and a focal point for the ongoing resistance to hell. The city was in the past destroyed by means unknown, but forces of the faithful continued to fight after, and the forces of the Sword Congress of Vienna rebuilt and fortified the city, and 36 years after its destruction, the reconstruction was complete, and it now stands against the forces of hell. This place is the key to human resistance. Its walls have never been breached. From its walls, forces can be sent out into no man's land to gather artifacts with great power and gather intelligence. Competition is high between these warbands, who compete with both the enemy and each other. Next up is the Iron Sultanate. This nation has a great wall, an iron one that encircles their kingdom. They were led by the Sultan when hell was first unleashed. Their numbers threatened the Sultanate of Rum. God saved them, creating the iron walls. With this protection, many came to join them, and these people formed the Iron Sultanate. Today, sharpshooters defend the wall, with regiments of Janissary ready to move out with great speed. Against greater numbers, the House of Wisdom can release its magical creations, the Taquin, and even the Sultan himself will come out if there is a dire need. The Sultan's forces can also act in smaller numbers when the mission calls for it, hunting heretic relic hunters who search for treasure and lost knowledge among the fallen caliphates, for example. The Church and the Sultanate know they stand on the same side against the heretics, but will not tolerate interference if one side hinders the other. Now down to our last three forces. Next up are trench pilgrims. They are militants aligned with the Church. Their fanaticism to their God is their strength. The belief draws in all from slums to men and women from the richest cities in Europe. The followers of the Metachrist will fight and die and be replaced by new fervent followers as fast as they can be felled by the heretic legions. Amongst these followers, some are touched by heaven's vision. Sisters will be marked by stigmata, take up a sword and fight as advised by angels. And those who have gone against the faith seek to redeem themselves by felling as many of the forces of the devil as they can before they themselves are slain. The kernel of every group of pilgrims is those who see the visions. They gather followers dubbed trench pilgrim processions, and armed they follow the prophet into battle, fighting with great zeal and the might of the true believer. As effective as these groups are, they are not sanctioned by the Church, but are blessed by them. But for all their zeal, they are not trained with a military skill set, but will face any demon without flinching, and a Metachrist might deem one of the fallen in death worthy, and return them to the field as martyr penitents to fight once more. Next up, the side of hell. At this time, a third of humanity has embraced the dark worship of the idols of hell. The heretic legions are those raised from their numbers, but sometimes hell will send its war beasts and artillery witches to aid their mortal followers, to bolster them against the power of the Creator. The rare spies that do manage to return from invading hell's domain do so with a grisly tale to tell. They speak of the horrors they have seen, cathedrals to the princes of hell, alchemists toiling over great weapons and armoured beasts to produce arms beyond the grasp of a human engineer. And for those who switch sides, their cities and churches fallen, they now plot and scheme with the demonic to throw down the throne of heaven. Those who wish to join the army go to the bronze gates of hell to endure the heat and discarded souls on the way there. Those who succeed are deemed worthy and brought into the legion's ranks. You'll have to take a vow, and you will be branded, binding those successors to their devil lord. Then with arms and guided by heretic priests, a new member of the legion is born. Now the last one, the cult of the Black Grail. They are dedicated to pestilence and disease. They spread this via the Black Grail, the worst plague ever seen by humankind. Beelzebub leads them. Those who fall to this plague are killed, and then revived, forming war bands. And to spread the Black Grail is their mission, and to mock those of the faith by gathering grisly tokens for their plague lord. Those who embrace the Grail closest join the Order of the Fly. Their very weapons and armour are corrupted, and to receive them they build grisly altars to mark their lord, their fallen victims shaped into flies. So those are the factions of the Trench Crusade, the forces of either side of heaven and hell, the land of the Creator, their battleground. Now let me know what you think to the lore and the factions here. Who would you choose to side with? And if you like this video on the Trench Crusade, wait a week and I'll have another one for you.